Hey everybody, we're back. This is Dust for Dust on Gaming with Janshevik's blue-white favorable wins list. He has a couple cards in his maybe board that I'm going to mention before we get rolling here. Cards in his maybe board are Cast Out, Jace Cunning Castaway, Nimble Obstructionist, Sorcerer's Spyglass, Teferi Hero of Dominaria, Immortal Sun, Walking Ballista, and Warkite Marauder. Warkite Marauder kind of fits into the flying theme. Mortal Sun obviously has a very wide variety of things it does. Jace, somewhat interesting card for this kind of list. Sorcerer Spyglass obviously shuts down hard to shut down things like planeswalkers and vehicles. Walking Ballista also very powerful. And then Nimble Obstructionist is an interesting card that could see play in this deck. So this deck is kind of a mashup of the budget favorable wins decks and the blue-white historic lists. So you've got things like Roth, Shalai, Lyra, a couple of counter spells to pair along with things like Artifacer's Assistant, Siren Storm Tamer, Hope of Gear 4, and favorable wins. So you're kind of you kind of have the top end of blue-white historic here, with kind of the early aggression of a tempo blue-white favorable wins list. Artifacer's Assistant with all of our artifacts and stuff in Legends gets us a little bit of card selection, allows us to scry, etc. Siren Storm Chaser is kind of an on-board trick to protect some of our bigger, heavier hitters from opponents' targeted removal. And it actually also counters Settle the Wreckage because of the way it's templated, because us target you or a creature you control, because Settle the Wreckage specifically says target player controls. Hope of Gear 4, it's kind of a 1-1 here, gets pumped up with that. Also can keep our opponent from casting non-creature spells for a turn. Can be relevant against control decks, etc. Obviously, favorable wins pumps up the team. Chart a Course can be a divination or a looting effect depending on if we have creatures on board or not. Seal Away is a little bit of spot removal. A Catcher's Monument is a way to grind a little bit, makes our spells a little bit cheaper. Can also flash it in with things like Roth and stuff. So gives us a little more of a grind. Ether Sphere Harvester gives us a little bit of some of our creatures having haste. Also, pretty important in the red matchups. Allows us to race a little bit more. Disallow just as a hard counter. Roth here because he fits with a theme and allows us to play a much heavier flash game in the mid to late game. Settle the Wreckage just as a 1-of to catch your opponent a little bit off guard. Shalai protects our other creatures. Its other ability isn't relevant because we don't have any green mana, but just a 3/4, giving everything else hexproof is pretty important. And then Lyra, because why wouldn't you play Lyra in a blue-white mid-range list? Beyond that, so sideboard, a couple Fragmentize here to disrupt what your opponent's doing as far as vehicles and enchantments. Authority Consoles, pretty much for the red decks. Slows them down, gains you a little bit of life. Negates for the control matchups, and in matchups like black-red when they're going a little bit bigger. Catcher's Monument, a little bit more of a grind tool. Lets you get value off your creatures. So keeps the pressure coming. Every time you play a creature, you're basically getting 2 bodies. Ixalan's Binding when you need to shut down planeswalkers or other problematic permanents and you don't want them casting it again. Things like Hazoret, things like Rekindling Phoenix. Settle the Wreckage as another kind of tempo play when you're playing creature decks. And then Fumigates when you just need hard board wipes against things like the mono green decks that you're probably not going to be able to outsize and race. That's pretty much the list. It's an interesting mashup of things. It's kind of right in the middle of like some of the heavier hitters. Like you're not playing Teferi, you're not playing History of Benalia. So this list is probably relatively cheap for the standard scale of what things are going on right now. But you are missing some of the power of that. So we'll see if favorable winds and the quicker flyers are able to offset the lack of History of Benalia in this list compared to Blue-White Historic, and also see like things like a Catcher's Monument and Aethersphere Harvester are worth playing in a deck like this. So beyond that, that's been the list. This is Janshevik's list. We're gonna start hitting some guys in the 2-man queues, see how it goes. Just a warning, I'm getting a little bit of a headache for some reason, so I took some aspirin, but that may kick in here in a little bit, so I'm going to try to fight through, since I don't always have time to stream during the week now with work schedule being so awful. So if I make some mistakes or don't seem as chatty, that is why. But I do like the look of this list. It's fairly interesting, and you get to play a little bit of a tempo game with some of your cards. Especially you like want to go 1-drop favorable winds, 3-man interaction, 4-drop, 5-drop. It's going to be hard for a lot of decks to come back from that. So some matchups will be the aggressor, some matchups will be kind of the control deck. A lot of it depends on the nature of... And this is an interesting hand. I think we'll go ahead and keep this one. Obviously we don't have any of our early like threats, but we do have all of our land drops. We have a couple cycling lands, so can probably play out like one cycling land, hold the other one to cycle just in case. Because we do want to make land drops through number 5. Beyond that, we really don't need that. Don't seem to need that many more lands. Alright, good old Magic Online lag here. See if I have any additional... Yeah, I do have. It's like, do I have any additional Magic Online things open? Alright, so plains, that means we're just going to end up cycling this other irrigated farmland here. Up against Sunpetal Groves, doesn't really tell us a whole lot. Alright, some type of energy play here. Cycle this irrigated farmland. I'm gonna chart a course. We find some of our creatures to go with us. Nope. So just play out the harvester here. Pass our opponent. Some Servant in the Conduit beatdowns here. Okay, see what our opponent's next play is. Steel Leaf Champion. I'm supposed to just take away this Servant in the Conduit right now. Hold up this other Seal Away or irrigated farmland cycle, depending on what our opponent does. Just gonna take the hit. I don't want to get blown out by Blossoming Defense in combat here. See if our opponent holds up mana the whole time. Another Steel Leaf Champion. Second one's going to be a little bit rougher to deal with. Alright, well, apparently we're not meant to draw creatures this game. So we're 13 cards into our deck and haven't seen a one of our 18 creatures yet. Seems like a little bit. Yeah, it's pretty much my thoughts. I'll admit the hand I kept was like a tad bit greedy, but this is just kind of ridiculous. So what am I discarding here? Don't know that we're going to be able to race a Steel Leaf Champion here, but at least gives us the opportunity to start to race a little bit. See if our opponent has like a Steal Away or something on end step. Nope, just a cycle. It's possible we could race this. Not holding out a ton of hope here, but it's possible. Lyra is going to be a little bit rough. Looks like we're just up against a green-white good stuff Angels deck. See how our opponents want to approach this turn. Looks like our opponent's considering a Hash App Oasis activation here. Alright. Block here. They have Blossoming Defense, we're dead. I guess I'm cool with that. I think we're pretty close to dead here. Um, so shall I plan on running the same? We're just in bad shape all the way around. We need to find either our own Lyra or a Cellular Wreckage. I think are really the only cards that kind of get us back into this game. Gonna use Shalai to going for yeah, that's fun. Not trying to kill your guy, dude. I'm just actually trying to survive. Oh, Johnny Unyielding, sure. And Roth isn't going to be enough here. Alright, so now that we know what we're kind of up against here, we can kind of try to sideboard against this. Just like green, white, good stuff. Probably want the Fumigates. Probably might be interested in some number of these bindings. This is not No Catcher's Monument matchup. Hope of Gear 4 probably isn't at the best. Harvester is fine, but not fantastic. Just put our curve. Supposed to trim a Roth. Like trim a Roth and a favorable wins. Kind of become more of a kind of control-ish deck here. Big problem is our opponent does have Blossoming Defense in their list, so eh. This is a very similar matchup to what gave us fits when I played Blue-White Historic in a league. Just like kind of a go bigger version of Angels. I think we're going to keep this hand. It's a little on the slow side. We have a couple of our early plays. We have a counterspell. Have our Cellular Wreckage. So, I think this hand has a lot of upside if we draw lands. Now it all comes down if we start drawing lands or not. So how's everyone doing this morning? Hope you're enjoying a little bit of Standard here. Played a basically red-black, splash-green modern burn deck that was featuring things like Claim to Fame, Undying Evil, and yep, Servant of the Conduit. Not sure why that took so long to figure it out. Huh. Well, we didn't draw a land, but I guess Favorable Winds is about the closest thing we get to that as our best 2-drop here. So we go from having no lands to too many lands. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have too big of a play here. Feels like Walking Ballista, maybe? Oh, Brontodon. Yay. Past our opponent here. Feels like there's a Lyra or something coming down here. Nope, just a Shalai. So Shalai makes our Settle the Wreckages look kind of foolish. I think we're going to have to counter this one. This must be the list from pretty close to the Abs and Angels list that got played at the SCG Invitational over the weekend. Hopefully we keep hitting land drops here. Alright. Allows us to play Roth as kind of a The question is do I dare risk Roth here? I think I just take the damage here. As silly as this sounds. Yep, serving the conduit. To draw a land here. Chart a course. Not sure what exactly we can hit here, but Siren Storm Tamer and why is this not allowing me to... Why is it not allowing me to use Hope of Girfor's ability here? Your next turn, target player who is dealt combat damage by Hope of Girfor can't cast non-creature spells. Alright, well, I guess we have a glitch submission for this matchup. Yeah, definitely buggy. Oh no! Target player. Shalai. Shalai is the explanation. Force them to do this. So they either lose their Shalai or they lose their Brontodon here. Earth is this? Oh, no, just onboard counters. Sure. So I basically need to draw Fumigate this turn. Nope. Alright, well. Nope, was not buggy, it was onboard Shalai. So. That explains it. So, how's everyone doing this morning? Playing a blue-white Flyers list. Kind of a mismatch between the blue-white historic lists and the favorable wins, either mono-blue or blue-red lists that have been floating around. The list that we just played against is... I've seen a couple of similar lists now. There was an Abs and Angels list that did pretty well at the SCG Invitational over the weekend. When I was playing Blue-White Historic in a friendly league, I also played against a Bant list that was doing something very similar. List is pretty powerful. Tends to be a little bit stronger head-to-head than the Blue-White Historic lists, simply because their mana ramp allows them to play like bigger bombs. Like that list was playing like Steel Leaf Champion and such. Our opponent that we played against with the Blue-White Historic list was playing like Verdurous, Gearhulk. This was just like a bunch of 4 and 5 drops. This was like Verdurous, Gearhulk, Shalai, Lyra, that kind of stuff. So it's nice to see that there's still underneath the surface of the sea of mono red and blue-white control, that there still is some like innovation taking place on like the lower levels. So it's not just like a blue mono or blue-white control red-black kind of world, but unfortunately the top tables of events certainly are. But it's nice to see that people are still trying to innovate in the format. Sand isn't fantastic, but I think we'll keep. Just dying to a magma spray. Yep. Shock. Alright, looks like we're up against the blue-red wizards list. But it feels like they have a spell. They're trying to bait us into blocking here. Nope, no blocks. Mm-hmm. Mainly did this to set up chart a course. This is one of those games I think if we get to the mid and late game, I think our deck is more powerful. Yep, Adeliz. To be fair, we might just be dead before we get to that point. So now our opponent has to be kind of careful how they approach this turn. Must say, Hope of Gear 4 in this situation, very, very good. Especially for our opponent's prowess deck here. Yeah, you can't cast non-creature spells, friend. See if they just attack in anyway. So there is some consideration for leaving the Storm Tamer around to protect Wrath and such, but okay, another Storm Spellweaver. And I just punted. Yeah, I just punted very hardcore there. I needed to play the Glacial Fortress. That way I could Lyra. If I'd landed Lyra here, the game would be over. Because my opponent didn't have counter spells up, and yeah, I should have just landed Lyra there. How many punts can we make? Lightning Strike going after my face. Okay. I guess if your last card is Shock, I'm dead either way, so may as well block here. Is your last card Shock? I guess Shock wouldn't kill us here. At least not on that end of things. Soul Scar Mage. Alright. So Artifacer's Assistant here is actually quite nice, because this allows me to do this, crew this. The question is, am I supposed to play Lyra before they know what's going on? Probably not. I think I'm in the market for a disallow here. Okay, opponent just conceded the game. Wasn't sure what they were trying to do there. Alright. This is not Noketra's Monument matchup. So what cards do we not want in this matchup? Probably want Settle the Wreckage. Probably want at least a couple copies of Negate. Maybe go down one Disallow since we're on the draw. And what is the other cut? Maybe one Artifaster's Assistant? Since these two cards both have relevant text in the game, Steal Away is pretty decent, Chart of Course is good, Favorable Winds is pretty good, Ether Sphere Harvester seems pretty excellent. Try it like this. This just seems to be one of our matchups where our top end kind of gives us the edge as long as we can resolve it. Like, our opponent's probably bringing in some amount of counter spells, but I don't know. Like, I can't really sideboard against their counter spells until we know, like, what counters they'd be bringing in. Like, stuff like Spell Pierce, if they have Essence Scatter in their deck, if they have, like, Wizard's Retort is probably the one that makes the most sense, and it was probably stranded in their hand because they only had one blue mana. So that is a card to note about playing around. Though I don't know, with some of these draws, how much we can play around a card like Counterspell. So, yeah, that makes sense. That's probably one of the cards that was stuck in their hand, was Wizard's Retort, because they only had one blue mana throughout that entire game. Yeah, this hand's fine. I say turn 1 Soulscar Mage. So we don't have a ton of ways to interact with a bunch of early creatures. Interesting. Wonder if they're stuck on one land. So the reason I took the turn off is neither Favorable Winds nor Hope of Gear 4 in and of themselves. Alright, so they got all in, which is annoying. Alright, so they have Spellweaver Elemental to the deck. Disallow. Spellweaver Eternal, sorry, not Spellweaver Elemental. Good, add this to the board. So probably have a removal spell for the Hope of Gear 4 here. It's not playing a relevant play until turn 3, impacting the board's a little bit slow. Would really like to draw Settle the Wreckage next turn. Shalai here probably isn't going to be good enough. Man, they just have all the combat tricks. So is Lightning Strike lethal here? 3, 5, 6. So if we would have hit an untapped land there, I think Lyra would have probably ended that game. But anyways. Alright, so some consideration for authority of the councils here. Some consideration for fumigates. I think disallow is just too slow. Like what, 1 fumigates, and guess it wouldn't hurt to bring in the authority of the councils. Maybe cut another Artifacer's Assistant so it doesn't really match up with what they're trying to do. Sure, hand seems fun. Mm-hmm. really sure what our opponent's best line is here. Probably well, first off, depends on whether they have a second land or not. And then, okay, yep, got the second land. Attack with the Soulscar Mage. Alright, tapping out for the Spellweaver Elemental. Alright, so favorable winds. Yeah, just play defense here. Not winning this race, and we have the better long game. %100% blocking Bomat Courier in this situation. Tells me you don't have another shock in hand. Soulscar Mages are going to be extremely obnoxious. Not going to really get us very far on this board, though. Hopefully your last two cards are garbage, whatever they are. Might be incorrect to attack here, but at the same time, I can't sit back and wait for them to draw another burn spell and shrink this Lyra even more. Lava Man, yep. So 2, 5, 6, 7. Let's pass here. Woo! Got there. Man, that was close. That was a close matchup. What do we have drawn? Into Aethersphere Harvester. Alright, we're going to go ahead and play one more match with this deck. Totally not bald. I can relate to that. So how's everyone doing this morning? My name is Dusk, or Duskblitter, here on MTG, both on Magic Online and Magic Arena. Play quite a bit of different deck lists here if you're new to the channel. If you're returning to the channel, thank you very much for your support. If you like what you're seeing, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps the channel to grow. If you really like what you're seeing, you know, hit the like button on the videos. If you want to help this channel grow, I have a small Patreon page I've got going on there. Gonna start adding some features to that. Beyond that, I mean, right now we're playing a users deck list. Sure, opponent good luck here. This is Janshevik's list, I believe. Yep, Janshevik. He is a somewhat regular contributor to the channel. I think we're going to go ahead and keep this. A little bit on the slow side, but... So. And immediately run into mono red. So the reason for the concession here, it's possible I could get back into this game, but my opponent has an aggressive start and I have no plays until turn 5 as it stood. So there was no reason to stay in that fight when we have very little way of getting back into it that early on with no early keeps here. Is this an Oketra's Monument matchup? A ton of random little shitters, but I don't know if that's worth it. Definitely want those in. I don't know how much we want Ixalan's Binding. Definitely want at least a couple Settle the Wreckages. Artifacer's Assistant isn't great. And maybe one copy of Disallow. feel like red's going to be a pretty rough matchup regardless, because we don't have things like Histra Benelia to really kind of nail it to them early on, stop their early tides. Sounds okay. I need to find white mana though. So the reason I conceded, and it was definitely too early on, but my opponent had no idea, like, even what colors we are, so they have no idea how to sideboard or anything. So, information advantage in game 2 is kind of relevant. Am I blocking Bomat Courier here? Probably not. Mm-hmm. Yep, all the more reason to deal with our go ahead and attack, because it was likely we weren't going to be able to block anyway, so. Not the most efficient turn here, but we're going to go ahead and get rid of Bug Boy. Yes, I know I could exile another card, I could wait, you know. But I really don't want to give our opponent the option of untapping, play a land, play a burn spell, and then sacking the Bomat Courier here. So. Got one Chain Whirler, yep. Fortunately, we don't have a second white to represent something like, okay, there's our Shaker Kenra. So if our opponent's got an Abrade or something, we're getting blown out here anyway, so may as well go for... So they're going to Lightning Strike us to give us the information before blocks. Okay. Alright, so that was a ruthless quick slaughter by Mono Red. So thoughts on the list. So trying to think here. I think the deck, obviously, when it's executing its strategy, is pretty good, but we have a lot of problems with drawing the wrong half of the deck. I know some of the hands I kept were very loose. I'm not going to sit here and say they're not. I did that both to see what range of hands this deck can keep and Obviously, it's standard. You can afford to keep a little bit slower hands. But thought process on the deck, it seems um, like if we can bridge the gap to our mid game, that we are a lot more powerful than the mono red decks, the even that blue red prowess deck, and the green white angel mid range deck. They all this seems to be my answer for everything, and it's actually quite frustrating. Is you need better removal. The white mana doesn't really give you access to proactive removal. It's more reactive with Seal Away, Settler Wreckage, and whatnot. I almost wonder if a Esper. I hate doing this because Esper makes your lands come in so tap heavy if you don't have irrigated farmland or the blue black one. But I almost think cutting, just as an example, cutting the Aketra's Monuments, the Seal Aways, one copy of Favorable Winds, and maybe one or two Artifacer's Assistant in hope of Gear 4 here. And maybe one copy of Disallow. Just these 7 slots here, and maybe even the Settled Wreckage in the main. This leaves you with 18 creatures, maybe even an Aethersphere Harvester. These feel like kind of the flex slots of the deck. And running some combination of Fatal Push, Cast Down, just to interact with earlier creatures that are problematic. Things like the mono red creatures, things like the stuff we saw out of the Prowess decks, things like what we saw out of even the green white angels deck, being able to kill a Steel Leaf Champion or those kind of creatures earlier on. And a real light black splash. Not trying to splash things like Vraska's Contempt, but maybe some number of Fatal Push, some number of Cast Down, some number of Hour of Glory. Just to, I believe that's the Black Hour. But just some number of instant speed, reacting to your opponent's creatures, and then being able to leverage your mid games with your Charta Courses, your Shalais, your Lyras. I think the core of the deck is powerful, and if you can go 1-drop into Charta Course into 3-drop Aethersphere Harvester or something else, Shalai into Lyra. I think that core of the deck is very powerful, but I think that mid bridge is just either you need to go with the historic package of Hysteria Benalia, or some type of maybe light black removal package. Because otherwise you just don't seem like you're fast enough to set up against decks like mono red or even blue red prowess or the bigger green based decks right now. Just that's where my thought process is. These 8 or 9 cards, maybe these cards all have their purposes, so I'm not saying cut them out completely. Artifacer's Assistant Scrying is relevant. Siren Stormtamer's ability is irrelevant. Hope of Gear 4 is relevant. But you need something to bridge the gap into the mid game where your Lyras and Shalais can kind of take over. So it's kind of where my thought process is on the deck. The sideboard seems pretty decently balanced. Once again, this Aketra's Monument doesn't feel like it necessarily does enough. Maybe shave 1 Ixalan's Binding gives you a little bit more flexibility. especially if you end up going with like the Esper Splash. I don't know. That's just my quick takeaway from a couple matches we played. Maybe I'm just too hasty in dealing with like wanting the black removal in the format, but I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts? Alright, well, it's been a fun morning. I wanted to get to a third league, but I don't think with my headache that's going here, I don't think I have the ability to play through Space Marines, Blue Whites, Teferi, WinCon list. So I think I'm going to call it a wrap on streaming this morning. Might come back this afternoon. We will see. If so, we'll be streaming Space Marines Blue White control list. Because there was a request to see his latest control list. But beyond that, thanks everyone for hanging out this morning. Thanks for everyone who checks us out on YouTube later. This has been Dusk for Dusted on Gaming. See you later.